Welcome back to the Bandwich Tapes. I'm Brad Williams. Today's guest is a drummer and educator who brings absolute intentionality to everything he does. Chris DeChiara has built a career on versatility, blending groove, precision, and a deep love of the craft. In this episode, we get into his roots as a young percussionist, how his approach to practice has evolved, why teaching energizes him, and what he's learned from playing across so many styles and settings. Here's my conversation with Chris DeChiara. Chris, welcome to the podcast. How's it going today?
Thanks so much for having me. It's going great.
I learned about you in an interesting way the other day and reached out to you. I was going through my podcast feed the other morning, and I subscribed to a podcast out of DC called Classical Breakdown, and there was this percussion episode, and I was like, oh, let me check this out, and listened to it and was just knocked out by what you were talking about and just your knowledge and the way you played on there, which I can't wait to kind of ask some questions about the nuts and bolts of that episode. But yeah, I immediately reached out to you and asked if you could be on here. So I'm really happy you said yes, and here we are.
Me too. I appreciate it. I'm honored that you'd ask me and that you listened to it at all from beginning to end. Pretty long.
Yeah, it was a long episode, but it was good. Even for someone, and I studied percussion in high school, college, and played for a long time, moved to bass guitar and singing after a while, but still love to talk about percussion. I love the direction that the conversation went, and I encourage my listeners to go and have a listen to it. I'll certainly put the link to it in the show notes. How did that episode in that interview come your way?
They just reached out.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah, which is, always the best way, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
I knew about the studio because it's close to a theater that I play at sometimes. But they just reached out and asked me if I wanted to do it and gave me kind of a basic outline and some of the questions or like the framework of what they were looking at, trying to find out. Then obviously it can't be held to such a strict script all the time. So, I go off on tangents anyway. So, it kind of goes here and there a lot. I couldn't really hesitate too long to talk about Ozzy because we talked about the vibra slap. I'm like, Ozzy.
I enjoyed that. I enjoyed that part of it, talking about it. It was great. And you brought, I guess you recorded it in their studio. You brought some equipment with you, brought some instruments with you. And I was quite impressed that it seemed like you just played some excerpts and nailed them. And, it's quite a thing to, it's kind of like an audition. I imagine you just had to set up and go, right? And
it's
do
funny
it.
that you said that because I was like, this shouldn't feel like an audition. I'm just kind of going to talk and play a little bit, but I don't want to play and suck. So I was trying to find the right things to play that meshed with what we were talking about. And some of the excerpts have to kind of practice. You can't just whip that stuff out of nowhere.
I'm trying to remember what all you played.
Well, there's some stuff I prepared that I didn't play, like, Porgy and Bess and stuff like that. But I played, the Carnival of the Animals, the Fossils, xylophone part. I played a little ragtime. I didn't listen to the podcast, so I don't know exactly what they played on there. But yeah, there was a little bit of a rag from Golden Age of the Xylophone. Fossils, and then I did some of Bartok, the music for strings, percussion, celeste.
Yeah.
On xylophone. Yeah. And then there was,
Which,
some stuff on snare drum.
Yeah, it was really good. And I think it was a good, if you're just like a music listener and don't really know the ins and outs of the percussion section, it was cool because I felt like, if you were listening to it on just a really high level, it was some good information. But even as someone who knows all those pieces well and knows those parts, I also got a lot out of it. So it worked on a couple of different levels, which I thought was really cool.
That's good. That's good to hear because sometimes you never know if you're, talking over people's heads or if it's too novice, and you just kind of have to do it and hope that someone gets something out of it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. So what happened is that I listened to it that morning and then kind of looked you up and looked at your website and just kind of read your bio and watched some videos and saw that, you have this really deep classical orchestral knowledge and great playing ability, but you're also a really great drum set player too, which sometimes I feel like it's kind of it's either or, right? So a lot of drum set players may struggle with playing orchestral percussion or vice versa. And it seems like, you're really skilled on both. So it was really nice to hear all that.
Thank you. It can be tough to try to keep up. I mean, even if you didn't play drum set at all, it's hard enough to keep up with just percussion in general. But it's funny that you say that, because just yesterday someone asked me to do a gig because they needed someone who specifically played drum set, but also concert percussion. Like, it was very specific. Like, we need you to play drum set, but you also going to have to come over and like play xylophone.
Really?
So,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, so, it's always good to be versatile and everything, but it's hard to keep up with everything, and you just gotta do the best you can.
Yeah.
I think what happened was that, I grew up playing drum set. So that was kind of my beginnings, and maybe we'll talk about that later. But usually, like, orchestral percussionists grow up playing orchestral percussion, and maybe they play drum set too. But I just happened to grow up playing in bands and being a rock and roller, and ended up getting into classical later. So I had a lot of drum set background already, and I still have that. So now I just kind of incorporate both worlds.
And I don't want to generalize it too much with this question, but I'm going to anyway. Do you think it's harder for drum set players to play concert percussion well, or is it harder for concert percussionists to play drum set with a good feel? Because I've heard a lot of really great orchestral players that struggle playing drum set with a good feel. It's very mechanical sounding. So where do you feel that resides?
That's a really good question. I don't know, but if I had to guess, I would say it would be harder to play, if you're a drum set player, to play classical percussion.
Yeah.
Because you can't really, it's more intuitive to jump on a drum set and play some, standard grooves if you're a percussionist, because you already have a good sense of time and you already have coordination, and to be able to sit down and do that would be a little bit easier. But if you're primarily a drum set player and now you have to try to play, a xylophone part or some good crash cymbals, it could be a disaster.
Yeah.
Yeah. Depending on the player. And a lot of drum set players can play concert percussion, don't get me wrong. But I think, to the question, it would be harder to be a drum set player and to try to learn concert percussion or to play it well.
Yeah. Where do you think that you having those building blocks as a drum set player, how do you think you benefited when you started really digging into the concert repertoire? Do you think that because I do think, even if you're playing in a concert ensemble, I think having a sense of feel and knowing how you fit in like you would if you're playing drum set, and I heard someone explain it, each limb should be like a fader on a mixing board, and you should consider how you're mixing yourself as you're playing. And I would imagine that dynamic piece of it, you benefit a lot having that drum set knowledge, transferring it over to classical percussion.
Yeah, and that's a good analogy. The drum set being a mixer, I've heard that a lot too. That, and depending on the style of music. So strictly with just drum set playing, if you're playing jazz, you're going to have a different mix in your limbs than you're going to have if you're playing Latin or if you're playing metal or rock.
Right.
Certain instruments are just going to be louder than others.
Yeah.
And I try to tell my students the same thing, maybe not in terms of like the mixing board, but, these things not everything is one level for every style. But
yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So like, if you have those kind of ears, if you're playing in groups already as a drum set player and, you're a concert player, your listening is really what it comes down to. You have to know how to blend. And there's so many factors that are involved: where you are on stage, what mallets you're using, who's playing at the time, how you're blending with that particular section, what the hall is that you're in at that point too. There's so many different factors that determine how you play.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. There's so much to it, so many factors to it. So I'd like to dig into a little bit and just kind of go through the timeline of you. You've done a lot. You've had quite a an amazing career from being a college student through doing drum corps and doing the Navy band. So I can't wait to kind of find out about your career path, but also your origin story. How did that begin for you?
It was super late. I mean, it was really, it seems like it all turned out well. I mean, but I wouldn't recommend that anyone starts as late as I did with percussion. Like I said, I grew up in, divorced family. My dad was a singer, but since he wasn't really around, I can't say that that was really an influence. I think I was just around once for one of his gigs. He was like Frank Sinatra, a crooner, incredible singer, but there was always music, and my mom would always listen to the local radio station that played 50s, 60s, 70s stuff. But my sister really was the one who brainwashed me. So she kind of took me under her wing. And when my parents divorced and I hung out with her a lot, I was hanging out in her bedroom and she'd play music and I just stare at the albums. 7 years old, Gary Newman, Judas Priest, Bad Company, Led Zeppelin, and just singing along and reading the lyrics. And we would record, like, she had a boombox where you could record onto cassette not just us, but the radio as well.
Yeah.
I don't know if you...
Oh, I do the same thing. Absolutely.
Okay. And she still has these tapes and she brings them out on the holidays. So, and she'll listen to this and she'll laugh or cry. So yeah, she would just, we'd listen to the radio and she'd press record and we'd sing along to the songs on the radio. And I'm sure somehow that, got into my bloodstream a little bit. But, at that point, there was no, I'm going to be a musician or anything like that yet. I did get a pair of drumsticks maybe a couple years later from a drum shop or a music store that we kind of sometimes went to. And there was a drum kit in the window. I sat at that drum kit and hit it with my hands or something. I made a noise for a couple seconds. But I had those drumsticks and I started air drumming to songs. And I thought I kind of knew what to do with my limbs, even though I didn't really have a drum set right then. And when I was 13, I did get my first drum set. And I sat down and I could play a beat. I think the first thing I played was Sharp Dressed Man by ZZ Top, and it probably didn't sound great, but I knew like what to do with the limbs and to play the beat. And obviously that doesn't mean it sounds good, So, but, I had the bare bones of playing a drum beat. So, then I started jamming with people, friends. I had a friend that played guitar and he'd come over and we'd just kind of jam. And I had my own boombox that I would just crank the music and play along to whatever was on the radio, make tapes of songs that I liked and play along with those songs. And again, I'd record myself. I'm not sure why I recorded myself at the time. Maybe I did want to listen back and critique myself. I'm not sure. But I remember thinking later that I knew how to play the beats, but they didn't really sound good. And I'd be afraid to listen to them now. Then I started playing with a couple bands and joined my first original band when I was, I think, 16, called Aftershock. And that was mostly an original band. I should say that I took a couple lessons. I took maybe about 2 lessons with a drum corps marching band instructor who came to the house. And that didn't really do anything for me. And then I went to a local music shop where a local drummer who was in a great band called Valkyrie, they were like, what's the band's name from Boston? Trying to play Nuno Bettencourt. Extreme.
Okay.
They were like just a younger Extreme. They were incredible. All these vocal harmonies and amazing drummer. And I took some lessons with him. Can't say I really learned much from him. And so I was mostly self-taught just from, playing with other people, and joined this band Aftershock, who I'm still friends with. One of the guitarists, Jay, is like my best friend. And we played a lot of clubs, a lot of bars around town, opened up for some national acts and, wrote songs. We played a lot of covers. And that's really where you learn the trade a little bit and learn a little bit about the business and how things are working, and driving your drums around with no cases, no hardware cases, just lugging it, throwing it in the trunk. I had a pickup truck. I just throw it all in the back, not covered at all.
Do you have a cymbal bag, or would your cymbals?
I did have a cymbal bag. Yeah, I was lucky enough to own a cymbal bag. Like the old Velcro ones, you just opened up.
Yeah.
And so I did that for a few years and thought I was going to make it with them. That didn't happen. And kind of around, okay, I'm going too far ahead. I think one of the pivotal things that happened was when I was in high school. So all during high school, I wanted to be an architect. And that was really the thing I thought I was really going to be. It wasn't a musician, it was an architect. And I was taking these mechanical drawing classes every year. And when we were making our schedules for the next year, my homeroom buddy, Chuck, every year he would say, take marching band, take the band, take the band, And I thought it was for nerds. And, I didn't want to join the marching band. I was in a cool rock band and, marching band wasn't really my thing at the time. And I thought, okay, it's my last year. I'm going to take music theory. Which meant you had to take marching band, concert band, percussion ensemble. And then I did take theory. And so that was when I had my first taste of any kind of like real musical training, because I couldn't read music at all. And I didn't know a thing about concert percussion whatsoever. I'm not sure if I listened to any classical music up until that point, unless it just happened to be on the radio. And so that senior year of high school, I was taking all these courses and I started to get kind of obsessed with it. My friend Chuck helped me learn how to read snare drum music because that's what I was going to play, and marching band and a percussion ensemble. I was kind of left to the easier things because I didn't know how to play mallets or timpani, and music theory. So I was learning how to, learning intervals, learning scales, learning how to write music. And that took me a little while for it to really sink in. But my teacher was so amazing and he helped me to learn and really get it. And I did stay after school a lot because if I didn't understand something, I couldn't leave without understanding it. So he helped me and I was learning all that. And then I'll never forget, I was put on timpani and I didn't know how to tune the drums. I didn't even know that you tune the drums. And he came over and tuned them to whatever notes they were supposed to be. And then I just kind of hit them in some really bad fashion. And that was that. So that was basically my senior year. And in terms of college, I had my mindset on LA because I was an MTV guy and hair metal was big. And I thought I was a pretty good drum set player at that point. And I thought I could challenge any of these people I saw on MTV. And oh man, I was so naive. And I had my heart set on going to the Percussive Institute of Technology.
Yeah.
Because some of these big shots taught there. And I thought that would be perfect for me. And so when I presented that to my teacher, he said, well, let me look at some other options and we'll come up with a plan. I thought, okay, that was it. So I didn't have any direction. Once I changed from architect to rock star, I didn't have any rock star plan. It was LA. That seems easiest. I'm going to study with some hair metal drummer and I'm going to make it big. Well, he came back to me and said, okay, I have 3 options. The Percussive Institute of Technology didn't really look substantial to him. I think he said it looked like a lot of fluff. And I know it's a good school and I'm not knocking it. I know people that teach there now, but for a teacher to recommend that to a 17-year-old kid, and he was looking out for me a little bit more than just, going out and running to LA and trying to make it big. And he looked at Berkeley and Boston, which I thought probably could have been a good option as well, because I heard of it and it seemed like a popular place to go. Again, super green, not knowing anything. But he said it was probably maybe too limited for me. It would basically just be drum set and maybe nothing else, which could be fine. But compared to University of Massachusetts at Lowell, that would be a more well-rounded school. I could do a little bit of everything there. And that was it. I was like, oh, okay, that sounds good. So he basically decided where I was going to college, and that's how that happened.
Yeah.
So then I got to college, and I don't know anything. I really don't know anything about concert percussion. But then I did.
Yeah.
After about 2 years, I really got addicted to classical music because I was starting to study it a little bit more. I'm playing pieces that I'm learning where the origins are from. And I did drum corps in 1994, where I'm learning where these arrangements came from. The Russian Sailor's Dance, Troika, these Russian pieces by Rimsky-Korsakov. And so I'm going back to the originals. I'm like, oh, this stuff is amazing. And the back of we all studied out of the Goldenberg mallet book. And in the back, you go through all the scales, you go through all the etudes. And in the back, there's orchestral
It
excerpts.
has all the excerpts in the back.
It's all the excerpts. I'm like, what are these about? So I would go to the school library and figure out where this 5-second excerpt was in this 30-minute piece of music on an LP. And I had no idea where to find these excerpts except the title of the piece and somewhere in this epic piece. And I'd put the LP on and I'd find that moment and I'd record it onto a cassette tape. So I built up this playlist of the excerpts in the back of the Goldenberg book, and I started listening to that tape over and over again. And now I want to get the whole piece of music instead of the 5, 10-second, 30-second excerpt. Now I'm listening to the complete pieces, and now I'm like, okay, this is nuts. Like, I want to be a classical musician and do the rock thing on the side.
Wow, that's awesome.
So that was like really the pivotal point there when I was, I think, a junior or maybe the end of my sophomore year, where it all completely changed. And then it was just gung-ho, classical. And that's what ended up happening. After undergrad, I did my first summer festival in Rome, Italy. And then I went to New England Conservatory for my master's. Again, being super green, I didn't apply anywhere else. And I just wanted to stay in Boston because I thought, I'm a Boston guy. I want to build up a network in Boston, stay in Boston. Maybe I'll get to play with the Boston Symphony. But the down part of that was that I wasn't competing with any other schools for scholarships. So I didn't get anything. They're just like, sure, come, no problem. But you're paying like full price.
Full price, right. Yeah.
And so then, went to NEC for 2 years, which was a huge educational experience and really gets you up to the level of being able to play auditions and win a job with an orchestra. And that's what was happening. I was taking auditions. I was doing summer festivals, traveling to Europe, doing stuff here and doing well in the audition circuit. And I think the third audition I took was the Navy band. That was 2 years after grad school, though. I moved back in with my mom after grad school.
What was that audition process like for the Navy band? Was it similar? Are those similar to an orchestra audition in terms of multiple rounds and playing excerpts and everything?
Mostly. The only thing that's different is that they want a picture of you. And I think it's to make sure that because you have to go to boot camp, that you actually have a shot at making it through boot camp. And there's also an interview process because they want to just do a little bit of background to make sure that, maybe you didn't do anything stupid recently.
Yeah.
And you do a little bit of marching during the final audition. So you have to march with a tenor drum, which is a huge part of the job. So they want to make sure that you actually can march and play.
Yeah.
Because if you can't, that's going to be probably the deal breaker. So that's where it differs. But otherwise, it's the same in terms of different rounds, behind the screen, playing all the instruments, plus drum set. At that time, anyway, they wanted someone that could play some drum set too.
Yeah. So you won the gig, and you retired from the Navy band, right? Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
I joined in 2001. When they said that I got the job, I actually had another audition like that weekend, and I asked them if they could just hold off a couple days because I was taking the Rochester Phil audition.
Okay, yeah.
And, military, I didn't know really what that was going to entail. And it wasn't something I ever thought about before grad school. And I thought, okay, well, if you can wait till after I take this audition, I can give you an answer. Because if I got the orchestra audition, I was going to take the orchestra audition. That didn't work out. I called them back, and that was it. So that was 2001. Then went to boot camp a couple months later, I think, in the spring of 2001, summer of 2001, went to boot camp. And then you go right to your job, basically. You don't have to go do anything else like most people in boot camp do that are a lot younger.
Yeah. And this was groups. In DC? DC?
Yes.
You were in DC?
Yeah. The premier bands in DC, the Navy band, the Marine band, the Air Force band, the Army band, they're all here. And it's, to get in, it is like an orchestra audition in terms of the level. It's just, a lot of people applying, a lot of rounds. It could be pretty grueling. It's definitely harder now than it even was then. And it was hard then.
Yeah.
It's just the level of people playing these days is just that much higher.
Yeah. I have a friend who plays horn in the Coast Guard band, and he's been in the band for years and seems to really love it. I mean, I think he's older than me. I mean, I know he's been in there over 20 years, and I think I think he enjoys doing it. He may stay for many more years. He just seems to really enjoy the gig.
Yeah.
So, what's the schedule like? What's the performance and rehearsal schedule like? And then there's some other responsibilities with the job, right?
Yeah, it depends because every day is different unless maybe you're on a staff job where it's more 9 to 5. But when you're performing in the ceremonial unit and the concert band, the schedule is going to be different. So there's one side of things is a permanent stage status where you're basically playing with the concert band all the time. You're rehearsing almost every day. You play a concert that weekend during like the fall, winter season. In the summer season, it's different. You'll play a concert on Monday and Tuesday nights in DC, 2 different locations. But if you're a rotator, like I was, basically you go back and forth. So one week you'll do ceremonies, one week you'll be with the concert band.
Okay.
So ceremonial weeks will be different depending on what is required that week. So funerals is kind of the bread and butter. There's, always funerals. And as a drummer, we would only do full honor funerals where you need a whole ceremonial unit, honor guard, and, you need a drummer, 2 drummers, and, excuse me. And because there's full honors and the simple honors. Simple honors would just be a bugler playing taps. There's no band. So we would do, sometimes 1 to 4 funerals a day. Not every day, but it just depends on the schedule for the cemetery. And sometimes we'll do, arrivals for dignitaries that come to the country and we welcome them basically, at the Pentagon or at the White House. We do, inaugurals, different presidents, different functions, inning ceremonies, like I said, arrivals, playing ceremonies at the tomb of the unknown. A dignitary will place the wreath in honor of someone that has passed, and we'll play for that. But the funerals, again, that's most of what we would do in the ceremonial side of things. And like I said, then the next week it would be the concert band. And once a year, we do a tour for 2 to 4 weeks to a different place in the country. I wouldn't go all the time. It just depends on who's kind of assigned that year and who's gone before. So there's like 5 different sections of the country, and you'd go to each section once a year. So Northeast, Midwest, West Coast, Texas, Florida, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that was, again, then on top of that, like you were saying, you would do collateral duties, which are just jobs outside of playing that help the band run efficiently. Yeah. It could be anything from working in the library to doing finance stuff, purchasing, anything really. It's like a business,
So I was thinking about the timeline of you starting. So did you become active? Was it right around 9/11 when you started? Were you like, oh, I might be in the Navy now going to war, right?
It was literally a month before where we moved here. And you could see the smoke from the Pentagon from our balcony in the apartment that we lived in.
My.
And it's like, welcome to DC.
My goodness.
So we actually stood watch. We don't, in the band, you're not doing a lot of, things that a lot of people in the Navy will have to do.
Yeah.
And one of them is standing watch. Like you do this stuff in boot camp that you'll never do as a musician that's in a premier band. Like you might do it if you're overseas in a fleet band, but the DC premier bands, our mission is Arlington Cemetery. That's like the number one thing. We're presidential support units. So we're not going to go out on a boat and, tie the thing to the, there's nothing like that going on. So, but after 9/11, we had to actually stand watch to the band building. And we did that for about maybe a month or 2. And that's when I first got in. One of the first things I was doing was standing watch. It's like, wow, like not a lot has changed since boot camp, but that went away pretty soon after. But it was just a crazy time. My mom was I remember Las Vegas. She couldn't get home. back to Boston. Everything was just nuts, just watching the TV the whole time.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was
Yeah.
absolutely crazy. Looking back on that experience of playing all that time in the ensemble, I mean, I imagine there was a lot of musical growth that happened in that playing all those years. Where do you feel like you grew the most as a player playing in that ensemble?
I think learning music fast, because a lot of the times you didn't have a lot of time to look at something, especially when an arranger just came in with something and, threw up a xylophone part. And, you had to keep your reading chops up.
Yeah.
And I think that can be easily forgotten unless you're put into that situation. If you're teaching students, to sight read as part of your practice regime, it's kind of hard because they just don't understand it unless you're put into the situation. So I think that was a big part of it. I think playing drum set in the band was a big part too, because you learned how to balance ignoring things and leading things at the same time, and just really being a team player, because
yeah.
Go ahead.
I want to dig into that a little bit. Funny enough, I was just talking with another drummer yesterday about the same thing, and I've talked with other drummers on here about that. And I'm curious what you may mean by that, but that I'm going to start it as being a drum set player that in an ensemble with a conductor, and I would imagine sometimes trying to figure out when you're the driver and when you're the passenger behind when you're playing drum set. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, and I think 99.9% of the time you're the driver.
Whether the conductor wants everyone to believe that or not.
They're usually, they trust you, I think, enough to go with you as long as what you're doing is very close to what they want. And as long as you're with them, because our last conductor was a drummer and, he had a great ear. He knew what to listen for. Anytime I was playing kit, he just let me do my thing. And if something was off, he'd say, okay, let's just try to do that section a little faster. Maybe I was doing it too slow or whatever, but it's just like being in a band, like a rock band, really just communicating. And, you're trying to get everyone to listen to you as well, which can be hard because a lot of people don't listen. And depending on where you're situated in the band too, can be hard for people to kind of lock into you.
Yeah.
So there's that. Like being a leader doesn't mean, you're just a big bully and you're like, this is the time and I'm going to do this and you're all going to follow me. It's not really that, but you're just trying to play confidently enough where people can rely on you for whatever it is, like the time. And maybe they'll be able to trust you more because they like what you're doing, I guess. If you're keeping good time, they'll trust you more to want to listen to you more, even if they happen to be across the stage. Because that can be a tough thing to do with that distance is, okay, how do I listen to something and not be behind? Because by the time I play it, it's going to be behind if I react to it, which is a huge thing that percussionists deal with all the time because we're so far away from the conductor. And that's a whole other thing too.
Yeah. Where you're playing fits in the beat. And the moment you start listening can be big trouble. I mean, that goes back to, playing in marching band or doing drum corps, if like you have to anticipate what's happening instead of reacting to it.
Well, if you're marching at all on the field, especially if you're in the back somewhere and you listen to what's going on in front of you, you're doomed. You're doomed. You got to follow the drum major. And that's why the section leader is subdividing his butt off.
That's right.
Because he's going from the drum major, not from anything that's you're hearing up front.
Yeah. And
I remember I made a mistake when I didn't realize from the opposite side of things, when I was playing in the front ensemble with the Boston Crusaders, like some of my first rehearsals, I was right with the drum major. And this is something that's not, I think, talked about as much, but maybe it's just because I was stupid anyway and everyone else knew about it. But, I was just playing my ass off. I thought I was nailing everything. I'm hitting the tam, bass drum, And then someone walked up to me and was like, you're way ahead. Like, what are you doing? Like, what are you listening for? I'm like, I'm right with the drum major. Like, no, you got to listen back. I'm like, oh, really? It's like, yes, play to what you hear behind you. That's your time. I'm like, okay.
It's
right.
But it's counterintuitive, right? As musicians, we're always taught to follow the conductor or follow the drum major, except when the sound is coming from behind you, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
yeah,
Yep.
it's crazy. Speaking of Boston, I have to ask, how you feeling these days about congrats to Boston for winning. I mean, what a great season for them.
I embarrassed to say I didn't really follow the season. Once I heard about it, I started watching some stuff online. I haven't watched the whole show yet, though. I've been meaning to do that. But yeah, it's unbelievable. And just knowing some of the people that are involved, it's amazing. Because when I marched, we were okay. I think that the Corps didn't make top 10 for like 40 years or something crazy. And then we got into semis being 4/10 of, what was it? We were 11th place. Oh, it's top 12. We were 11th place going into semis. And then we didn't make finals by 4/10 of a point. So we were crying. We were all distraught. And it was a huge thing. But I think since then, it's just soared every year. It's just gotten better and better.
Yeah.
So
I'm such a fan of Colin McNutt, and I have been for many, many years. And I just think he just knows. I love the way he writes, the way he instructs, and I just love any drum line that he's attached to. I love. I've been watching a lot of videos of them from the season, and they're just so good.
I'll never forget that guy because we used to be petrified of him. Because he wasn't really there with us a lot. He wasn't like our primary instructor or anything, but he would show up once in a while and we'd be like, oh my God, Colin's here.
Yeah.
And he would just like start cutting people and like, we're always getting like punished. It was like boot camp, any stupid thing, you're just getting punished for something. And I had my heart set on playing snare drum. It was my only year. It was my age out year for Boston. My friend, my same homeroom friend that I mentioned earlier, did Crusaders, and he was like, come on, let's do this. Like, we got to do it. I'm like, no, I'm in this band. I was still in this band, Aftershock. I'm like, no, I can't do it. I'm in this band. And then our age out year, he's like, come on, let's do it. It's our last year. And I wasn't in Aftershock anymore. So I said, sure, why not? Thank God for Chuck. And I'm playing snare. Like, I can play snare. I played 4.5 years in undergrad. I was a section leader for a couple of years. I can play snare. And when I went to some camps, I was like, these guys are playing circles around me. Like, I could read really well. I didn't have the chops at all that these kids, like half my age.
It's crazy.
Unbelievable. And I lasted a couple months. I did a couple parades. And then when things started getting deep into the season, I started getting phone calls from Colin. And I'll never forget, I had this one late night conversation with him, and we talked for like 3 hours. And we were probably the same age. He might be just a year older. And because me and my friend were 21 and a lot of other people were, a lot younger. He tried to convince me to play bass drum because I was older. I'd be more responsible. I could be the section leader of the bass drum line. And I thought, I don't want to hit the drum like every bar, boom, boom. Like, I could do better than that. It's like, no, man, I want to play snare. I got my heart playing on snare. This is what I dreamt about doing. And he was super cool about convincing me that that was not going to happen. So I convinced him to put me in the pit because I was in college at the time. I'm learning the mallet instruments. I was getting kind of proficient at xylophone and all the stuff. So that's what he agreed to. I wanted to play a lot of notes. I didn't want to just go boom, 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 which again, naive. I didn't realize how complicated it was going to be in the bass drum.
Right, sure.
And honestly, I didn't really want to carry a bass drum anyway. So that was it. I played in the pit thanks to Colin, and he was super cool about it. But yeah, he would just show up here and there. It's like, oh my God, here he is again.
But who knows how that season of playing in the pit and playing mallet instruments the entire time may have propelled you more as a mallet player back into college that led you on this path of playing classical percussion. Who knows? It could have helped in a huge way, right?
Yeah, definitely. Just that repetition. I mean, you're learning stuff by rote and they throw music at you and like, we're going to do these 2 bars for the next half hour and you're going to have them memorized. Okay.
And
that's the way it's going to be. And you just do it.
That's it. I want to talk to you for a moment. I want to ask you about this book that you wrote about the Rite of Spring. Really cool. I played that. I did some summer music festivals as well when I was in high school. I did the Chautauqua festival, Chautauqua Institution in New York. Played the Rite of Spring.
What'd you
the
play?
summer. I played Timpani 1.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it was wonderful. It was a
Yeah,
great
can't beat it.
experience. Other than it being an incredible piece of music, what led you to think there needs to be a book about the percussion parts of that piece? And I agree with you that there needs to be, and I appreciate you doing it. But what was the impetus of doing that?
Well, during the pandemic, we were all searching for things to do, and this wasn't on my radar at all whatsoever. It was more of, I am organizing photo albums in my closet downstairs because I'm home and there's nothing else to do, and I'm just going to organize this closet. So I happened to stumble upon a paper that I wrote in grad school. I took this amazing class called Ives, Schoenberg, and Stravinsky by John Heiss, who's an amazing teacher. And I wrote a paper on the Rite of Spring that ended up, I forget what was supposed to be about exactly. Like, what I ended up doing was more of a performance guide, which was not really what he wanted, but it just ended up being what I wrote about because I already have played it a couple times by then. And I wrote this big paper about performing the timpani part. And he gave me an A and said, but this is more of a performer's guide. And I think not really what he kind of intended the paper to be about exactly. So anyway, I found that in the closet, and I always had in the back of my mind that this actually could be an article for Percussive Notes, which is, as you know, the classical percussion magazine. And I kind of forgot about it, or that whole idea, until I found the paper. I was like, oh, let's see if this still has legs. So I started reading it, and I started contacting some people from Percussive Notes and realized this could be quite long and I would have to edit it substantially. So as I was reading it again, I was starting to try to edit it and typing it into a document. And in doing so, it wasn't really getting shorter. It was actually like I was correcting a lot of grammar, first of all. I mean, it was kind of horrendous with not just the grammar, but the run-on sentences. It's just really bad. And I was just correcting all that. And now I'm like double checking my facts. And all the performer stuff made sense, of course, but it was all the other stuff that, sounds really amateur, I guess. So I was just adding and adding and adding. And I thought, okay, well, maybe this could be something more than an article. It's not really big enough for like a book, like a tome, but let's see how long this will end up, and then we'll just go from there. And after all was said and done, it came out to be a small little book that I think is super educational. I learned a ton about the piece itself and the instruments and going through the sketches and the different drafts, the different sketches, and finding different books about it, different articles about it, watching different movies, and then self-publishing it as a whole other thing that, man, it was recommended me to self-publish from a friend of mine who's a writer, self-published. There's a lot to learn, and it took a long time, but it was a really, really educational experience, and I learned a ton. Now I was kind of a grammar nerd before. Now I'm just like, I see every little thing, and it probably drives people crazy. Yeah, because you like, how do I, if you're writing the bibliography and how to quote something, you like the way you have to quote things and like where to place the period and how many spaces after the period and then the quote, or is it italicized, the title that you're referring to? It's super specific. Like I'm going on all these like grammar websites to figure out how to write these things. And this was before AI, or at least the AI that we have nowadays where you could just, type anything in. But this was like going to like a Webster kind of website. There was another one, I forget the name, but just trying to find out how to write this one sentence correctly. It's like, which, sounds like a small thing, but it's like, if this thing's going to be published in my name, like it has to be correct. Like everything about it has to be at least grammatically correct.
You set out to learn this part of it, and then you learned this entire additional section of it that you had never even probably considered when you started it.
Exactly. Yeah. It's just one of those things where, you get an idea and then it just turns into something pretty big. I mean, where you can really learn a ton. So if there's a lesson in there somewhere, just take advantage of any opportunities and, learn from everything that you can, really.
Yeah, that's it. I have been busy leading up to us talking, but I'm actually absolutely going to buy a copy of it just because I've been thinking a lot about that piece. I was there, I think 30 years ago was when I played it. And I've just been thinking about that piece a lot. And it's just, I have such fond memories of the process of preparing for the performance of it. Such a fun piece to play in the percussion section, just the relationship, especially between the timpani and the bass drum, is just incredible.
I don't think I've been any more nervous than the first time I played that. It was, and it was a little pressure involved too, because I talk about it in the book, but I was at the Aspen Music Festival and I broke my collarbone like the third day I was there. And I thought I was done. I called John Haas. I'm like, I broke my collarbone, my right arm. I think I'm going home, not staying here for 2 months, doing nothing. He's like, no, man, no, you should stay. We'll work on your right arm. And there's lots of things you could do. You can go to the classes. There's all sorts of things. You can go to the concerts. Totally talked me into staying. I don't know how, but he did. And, maybe about a month later, I was out of I had you call it a figure 8 on, which kind of, they wanted it to heal naturally. So it kind of looked like that. And then the figure 8 pulls the collarbone back like that. And then a sling lifted it up. So it evened out the bone. And after about a month, I took the figure 8 off, I think, and I was still in the sling. No, I was not in the sling anymore. But anyway, we had to play Rite of Spring, but you had to audition to play the timpani part. I won that audition. And I mean, I'm telling you, like, this was another thing. Like, I never even knew what the Rite of Spring was before the Aspen Music Festival. I knew what it was. A friend of mine actually used it as a practice device, playing Bach on the marimba. Because, in terms of being distracted and having memory lapses, it's like, if you can play Bach on the marimba and have Rite of Spring playing at the same time and be able to play the Bach really well, then you that's going to help your nerves at an audition. So I'm like, so I did that all the time. But this was the first time I actually studied the piece. I remember John Haas and we conducted through it, just listening, and he taught me how to conduct through the score, which is super helpful. And I just learned it there, took some lessons, and then we had to audition for it. I got that part, and everyone was pissed off at me because they had way more experience. They had way more reason to be playing that part than I did. But I'll never forget, James Conlon was conducting, and I was so nervous. I have one picture from that where you can see me behind the timpani, and you probably see me sweating. It's my white tuxedo. Yeah. But
what a feeling to play that piece and play it well and accomplish that in performance. I'll never forget the night that we performed it. I felt good about the way that we played it, even
that's
being
great.
a bunch of high school kids, It's
that's
amazing. It's an amazing piece of music. So I'm with you. I have such a memory of playing that all those years ago. Yeah, it was so much fun. The other thing I learned about you is that you and I have something in common with each other, not just all of the stuff that we've talked about, but I lived in Atlanta before we moved to St. Louis, and I was in a Beatles band called Nowhere Men. Funny enough.
Oh, way. Nowhere Men or Man?
Nowhere Men.
Man as in singular?
No, as in plural. Nowhere Men Atlanta. Yeah, we were a Beatles cover band.
That's crazy.
Yeah, as you also you play in I saw in your bio that you played in a band. Do you still play with that group?
Yeah, I'm the lead singer, actually.
So was I.
Oh my God. You didn't play on a cajon tab too, did you? Or were you playing the drum set?
I was playing bass, actually. I was doing the Paul stuff. Yeah.
That's crazy.
It was a 5-piece band, so it was more about, we had like a keyboard player and then 2 guitar players, and one guitar player subbed on, like filled in a lot of those additional string parts, and it was
like a full band.
Yeah. You guys do like more an acoustic thing, right?
Yeah. It's acoustic instruments amplified. Yeah. And I play it's called a cajon tab. It's basically a cajon a smaller cajon that you can just kind of wear on your strap on, and then has a pickup on it.
That's cool.
It's built kind of the same. It has like a snare bed on the top, and just provide that texture, and then be able to stand up and play and sing. But that's what we do. We focus on the vocals. No drum set, nothing like that. But Yeah, love that.
The songs are deceptive, aren't they? People think there's not a lot to them. There's a lot going on under the hood of those songs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's so much. It's crazy. Some of
Yeah,
those
it's
vocal
crazy.
harmonies are amazing.
What those chaps managed to accomplish in a short amount of time is pretty mind-blowing to me.
Short
Yeah, it's
amount of
crazy.
time, and it's such a young age too. The progression was just so incredible in such a short period of time. It's
Yeah.
just like that,
Yeah.
you know.
It's incredible. And what they and you can say this about a lot of this, many of those songs back then, but what they could say both lyrically, harmonically, and melodically in like 2.5 minutes is pretty incredible.
It's like
Yeah.
I always say there's like no fat on any of those songs. It's
Nope.
like everything was just so concise and perfect. No matter what you thought about it, I have plenty of friends that don't like them, but just the songwriting ability to not have any extra crap going on.
That's it.
It's just a lot of people say that, the hardest thing to do is write, a simple 2-3 minute song, right? And
Yeah.
they were doing it like it was nothing.
Like it was nothing.
Hundreds of songs.
Yeah, with really interesting chord changes, and yeah, I mean, it's like wow, it's incredible. Yeah,
And they made it not sound difficult. That's the thing.
that's it. That's
you know?
exactly it. Because when we all started really digging in, and I knew those songs and knew those parts, but really digging in, especially having to play those bass parts and sing them at the same time, I'm like, Paul, you're a jerk. Why?
Yeah,
He does
even.
not. He does not. He does not get as much recognition as he deserves for the type of bass player that he is. I mean, there's some really hard bass parts in those songs that he
Yep,
managed
for
to
sure.
do. Yeah.
Yep. I always, there's always parts in the sets where, I have to talk. I'm the talker because I'm the lead singer of the band. I have to think of things to say, but I'm always giving recognition with, certain bass parts that are hard, or when we do And Your Bird Can Sing, it's like, give it up to these guys because that might sound easy to you, but that's super hard.
Super
hard.
Yeah.
All three, and I'm like, give these guys props because
It's not easy. It's not easy. Before we go, I'm just curious. So, what are you up to these days? What is your schedule like these days between teaching and playing? What all do you have going on?
Well, I have Alexandria Symphony, so I'm
Mm-hmm.
principal percussion there, Alexandria, Virginia, and we have our first concerts of the next season this weekend, Friday night, and tomorrow night, Saturday night, and Sunday afternoon. Doing Tchaikovsky's Five. I'm playing timpani for this concert, a Gershwin's Piano Concerto, and a couple of new pieces. And then got some gigs with my longest running band, Dr. Fu, which is going on 21 years now, I think.
Cool.
We got some local shows in the area, bar gigs, club gigs, some theater stuff. And my Iron Maiden tribute band we're closing out the year with a couple gigs, Pennsylvania, in Pittsburgh in October, and we're in Ohio in November. We travel a lot now. So there's that. And I'm playing with doing something I haven't done before, is playing a whole gig on a sample pad. So that's with the Young Artists of America, which are based in Maryland. And they're mostly high school students that are phenomenal. They're so good. And sometimes I help out, round out the core band, like if they need a rock band or something. I played drum set with them before. But I'm playing my Elisa sample pad for Britney Spears musical called Once Upon One More Time or something like that. And you need like 25 different kits. So I went through my sample pad and I'm like emptying out all the stuff and I'm reconfiguring all of my kits to make room for all of these kits that are going to have to come in here. But that whole gig is primarily on the sample pad with a couple of cymbals and wind chimes and stuff. But there's a drum set player, but I'm providing a lot of electronic sounds, some orchestral things. So there's that. I think that's about it. I teach at Catholic. I'm adjunct professor of percussion there. So I'm there one day a week, Catholic University in Washington, D.C. And I think that's about it.
Yeah. Well, that's a lot. You have a lot going on. That's a nice variety. I would imagine that it keeps you busy, but it gives you a nice variety of different playing and teaching opportunities.
So one night I'm in a tuxedo, one night I'm in a t-shirt and jeans. That's pretty much my life.
That's all right. I think that's what a lot of musicians, that's a good configuration. I would say that's really cool.
Keeps things fun, keeps things interesting. Never really get bored. Yeah.
That's great. Well, I can't thank you enough. I'm really happy that we were able to connect and do this.
Me too.
Yeah, I was just knocked out by the way you played and just your perspective on just the art of playing percussion, and wanted to dig in and just kind of know more about you. And I'm glad that I did, because you've had quite a great career so far, and it sounds like you're still rolling along, which I'm really happy for you. Just, yeah, bravo to what you're doing, and just keep it up. So yeah,
I
thanks for
plan on
everything.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Take care, and thanks for what you're doing.
Thank you, Brad.
Thanks so much for listening to my conversation with Chris DeChiara. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and share the show with someone who might love it. Thanks again for tuning in to the Bandwich Tapes. I'll see you next time.